You finish work, sit down on the couch and open your phone. Within minutes, a strange discomfort settles in. You're not doing anything wrong, but it feels like you are. You tell yourself you've earned this rest. You worked all day, you completed your tasks, you showed up. But the guilt doesn't leave. It just sits there, quiet and persistent, like a low hum you can't turn off. And here's the strange part. When you don't rest, when you push through and stay busy, you feel tired. Not just physically tired, mentally drained, empty in a way that sleep doesn't seem to fix, so you're caught. Rest makes you feel guilty. Not resting makes you feel exhausted. And somewhere in the middle of that, you start wondering if something is wrong with you. It's not. But the reason why this happens is more uncomfortable than most people realize. The guilt you feel when you rest isn't about laziness. It's not a sign that you lack discipline or that you're wasting your life. It's a response to a system you've internalized without realizing it. From a very young age, you were taught that your value is tied to what you produce. Good grades meant you were smart. Finishing your chores meant you were responsible. Being busy meant you were useful. Even play had to be productive. Even hobbies had to lead somewhere. Rest, on the other hand, was earned. It was a reward for productivity. You didn't rest because your body needed it. You rested because you completed enough tasks to justify it. That belief didn't go away when you became an adult. It just became quieter, more automatic. It embedded itself so deeply that you stopped noticing it was there. Now, when you sit down to rest, your brain runs a background check. Did you do enough today? Did you finish everything? Are you allowed to stop? Is there something else you should be doing right now? If the answer feels uncertain, the guilt arrives. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you've been conditioned to measure your worth by your output. And this is where the second part of the problem begins. The exhaustion you feel when you don't rest isn't just physical fatigue, it's cognitive depletion. Your brain is not designed to run in productivity mode all day. It requires downtime to process information, consolidate memory, and regulate emotion. When you deny it that downtime, it starts to falter. Research on cognitive load shows that sustained focus without breaks reduces decision-making ability, increases irritability, and creates a mental fog that makes even simple tasks feel overwhelming. You're not tired because you worked too hard. You're tired because you didn't stop. But here's the trap. When you finally do stop, the guilt kicks in. So you either rest and feel bad, or you don't rest and feel worse. Let's look at what this actually looks like in everyday life. You come home from work. You've been answering emails, attending meetings, managing tasks. Your brain is full. You sit down and immediately you think about the things you didn't finish, the email you meant to send, the project you're behind on, the phone call you've been avoiding. These thoughts don't arrive as reminders. They arrive as accusations. You tell yourself you'll just scroll your phone for a few minutes. But scrolling doesn't feel restful. It feels like procrastination, so the guilt grows. Or maybe you decide to do something productive instead. You clean the kitchen, organize your desk, reply to a few more emails. You're moving, but you're not recovering. You're just shifting from one form of output to another. By the time you actually stop, you're too tired to enjoy it. And the next day, the cycle repeats. This is not a failure of discipline. It's a structural problem. You've been taught that rest is a luxury, not a necessity. That it's something you earn, not something your body requires to function. And because of that, your relationship with rest has become transactional. You don't rest because you need it. You rest because you've justified it. And if you can't justify it, you don't allow it. The result is a constant low-level tension. You're never fully working because part of you knows you need to stop. And you're never fully resting because part of you feels like you shouldn't. You exist in a strange middle space. Too tired to be productive. Too guilty to truly rest. Just hovering somewhere in between, getting neither the recovery you need nor the output you're chasing. Now, this doesn't mean rest is always pure or that guilt is always wrong. Sometimes guilt serves a purpose. It signals misalignment between your actions and your values. It tells you when you've crossed a line or neglected something important. But the guilt you feel when you rest after a full day of work is not that kind of guilt. It's not telling you that you're doing something wrong. It's telling you that you've internalized a belief system that equates your worth with your productivity. And that belief system is exhausting because it means you're never enough. No matter how much you do, there's always more you could have done. No matter how hard you work, there's always someone working harder. Here's the uncomfortable part. Knowing this doesn't make the guilt go away. You can understand the mechanism perfectly and still feel it, because the conditioning runs deep. It's not something you chose. It's something you absorbed over years of living in a culture that rewards busyness and punishes stillness. But understanding it does give you something important. It gives you the ability to recognize the guilt for what it is. Not a moral signal, not evidence of laziness, just a learned response. When you sit down and the discomfort arrives, you can notice it. You can see it as a reaction, not a truth. And that small shift, that tiny bit of distance between you and the guilt, changes something. It doesn't make rest easy, but it makes it possible. It makes it something you can do without turning it into a battle with yourself. The exhaustion you feel when you don't rest is your body trying to tell you something. It's not asking for permission. It's not negotiating. It's simply running out of resources. Your body doesn't care about deadlines. It doesn't care about productivity metrics. It just knows when it's depleted. And when it reaches that point, it starts shutting down systems to protect itself. That's why everything feels harder when you're running on empty. Why small decisions feel enormous. Why conversations feel draining. Why even rest doesn't feel restful anymore. And the guilt you feel when you do rest is not your conscience. It's an old script written by a system that values productivity over people. A script you didn't write, but one you've been repeating for years. You don't have to fix this. You don't have to become someone who rests effortlessly or someone who never feels guilt. That's not the goal. That's just another form of pressure. The goal is just to see it clearly. To understand that the tension you feel is not a personal failing. It's a predictable outcome of the way you were taught to think about rest, work, and value. And once you see it, you can stop blaming yourself for it. You can stop treating rest like a moral test. You can stop measuring your worth by how much you produce. You can just sit down, feel the discomfort, and let it be what it is, not evidence of who you are. Just noise from a system you didn't choose. The guilt will probably still show up. The exhaustion will probably still arrive when you push too hard. But you'll know what they are. And that knowing, quiet as it is enough. Because once you stop fighting the guilt, once you stop trying to prove you've earned your rest, something shifts. The tension loosens. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Enough to sit down without immediately reaching for your phone. Enough to close your eyes for a moment without thinking about what you should be doing instead. Enough to just exist, without turning that existence into a task. That's all this is. Not a solution. Not a cure. Just a clearer way of seeing what's actually happening when you sit down to rest and the discomfort arrives. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're just living with a belief system that was never designed for your well-being, and now you see it.